Hello there, Lisa McClennon. It's a pleasure to have you on the red couch today.
Hello, Angie. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, you and I, we met about a year ago.
Yes.
I don't know if I can say it, but there was a moment, and I told you that already. There was a moment where I was worried that the communication I was having with these two amazing people, I was talking to some scammers in Nigeria. And then when I really saw you live on camera for the first time, I was like, no, they're real people. You probably thought I was crazy then.
No, I didn't think you were. I didn't think you were crazy. The world moves at such a fast pace. You really have to be careful, and I found it quite comical, but here we are.
Yeah. And here we are a year later, still talking to each other.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Tell us something, fun fact, or maybe a little story about yourself that people won't be able to read on the internet.
Sure. I'm a yogi.
Well,
I practiced yoga for many years now, mostly off and on, but I'm back into my practice now. I'm a gardener and I enjoy cooking. And some might question what those things have in common, but they all come back to the earth and grounding. And when I think about the things that I've done in life, particularly professionally, they are often high stakes and high stress. And those are the things that bring me back to center. I'm originally from Oakland, California, or the East Bay of California, right outside of San Francisco. So I'm a descendant of the land of hippies. I'm a yoga taking, Birkenstock wearing, tree hugging, yogurt eating
mm,
person.
I love,
Granola crunching, let's not forget that one.
yeah. I don't know if I ever told you who I was named after.
No, no.
Angela Davis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, my parents were hippies, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
so they also, there was music playing all the time, and we would go on vacations with the guitar and
Yes.
sit around the fireplace. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that kind of lifestyle and feeling. And still, we're both in sort of, very structured, we got very structured organizations.
Yes.
You're a highly accomplished professional, someone I admire. Do you want to tell us a bit more about, how you got to where you are today? And I'm not only talking about Geneva. I mean, I'm
Sure.
also talking about your professional journey
Sure.
and basically why you do what you do.
Absolutely. So it's kind of a circuitous route, but we'll get there. Of course, I live in Geneva now, and I am the Director of Internal Oversight Services for the World Health Organization, which is a United Nations organization. It took many, many years to get here and many different paths to get here. Why I do what I do is because my principles, the core of who I am, my principles are justice and peace, and
Mhm.
in that order. And some might argue, well, of course, because there cannot be peace without justice. Um, Over time, I've moved more towards restorative justice, which includes not only accountability for those who are engaged in wrongdoing, but also those who are affected. The people who engage in wrongdoing have families, they have mothers. They often inflict well, that's what they do. They inflict their harm on other people. And so or how do we create the restoration? And for me, that's about looking for creative ways to not only repair the harm, but to also restore or repatriate the dignity of people and back into their families and their communities. And one might argue, oh, what does that have to do with oversight services? But that's the core of what this field is about. By way of background, I started my career in the 1980s, showing my age here. in a small town in Texas. As you can tell, I'm an American, but in a small town in the hill country of Texas as a part-time police officer. I then matriculated to a larger city in the wild, wild west in Dallas, Texas. I was a police officer, and then into the national system doing various things, immigration law, housing, and then landed later at the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is where I moved into the international arena and began doing justice work internationally, humanitarian assistance and international development. While I will continue the story shortly, the short answer of how I got to where I am today is through the grace of others, through tenacity,
Hmm.
through quite a bit of luck. And people argue that luck is the place where preparation meets opportunity, and I think there's a lot of truth
That
to
is
that.
beautiful. Preparation meets opportunity. I have to remember that. That's
It's not mine.
yeah,
I
yeah,
gift it to you from stealing it from someone else. So
yeah. I sometimes say, like it's with, for example, with networking and some of
yes,
these topics that we tend to discuss a lot in coaching,
yes,
uh, these things, they're not linear. Yeah.
that's right.
So you need to sort of work. It's a bit like, gardening. You work
Yes.
in the ground and in the beginning, you basically just turn the earth around,
Hmm.
yeah, and
Hmm.
make sure that the soil is actually fine, that it's good soil to work with. And then you plant your little seeds, and then,
Yes,
in 1 or 2 years, if you watered the seeds well, then you
yes,
see those little sprouts. And then, 10, 20, 15, 30 years later, you suddenly have big trees,
yes.
and grounding and all of that coming together. Um, so I always think that, the important things in life, they're not so goal oriented as we might have been taught in our cultural upbringing. They don't come by chance, but it's like this mixture of preparing for them
Mhm.
and at the same time, staying open, keeping an open mindset for those wonderful opportunities that come your way.
Absolutely. I would also say that maintain, we all dream. Maintain those dreams even when it seems as though a door has closed. The If we remain open to how our dream can manifest itself, it typically exceeds the bounds of our own imagination. You had asked the question, how did I get here? That's not where I started. When I was a young child, from as far back as I can remember until about age 15, I wanted to be in the medical field. My
Mhm.
mom was a nurse for more than 40 years, and I saw how much she struggled to take care of us. And I thought, well, I'll become a doctor
Mhm.
because they make more money. This is a field that I'm interested in. The hard work that she's putting in, while gratifying, is not paying her what she's worth. And when I turned 15 years old and started thinking about going to college and where I would go and trying to chart my path, I realized how much of an investment that was going to be. I was looking at it as a financial
Yeah,
investment.
yeah.
And I realized that, undergrad school, pre-med, med school, internship, residency, I would probably be near 30 before I could start earning a return on that investment. At
Mm,
15, that was literally a
mm,
lifetime
mm,
away. Around the time that I realized that this probably wasn't going to work out for me to become a doctor, I met someone in law enforcement who took me under her wings. And over the next 3 or 4 years, meeting her friends, seeing what she did, so on and so forth, I ended up going the law enforcement path. And in the moment, as a teenager, it was like, well, that dream's not going to happen. And fast forward about 35 years, and I go to work for the World Health Organization, saving lives in a very different way. And there was a lot of contentment that I built over the years. Well, okay, that didn't work out, but maybe I can do this. And each one of those things, each one of those moments of contentment served as a stepping stone to my next thing. And the step before the World Health Organization was I became a yoga teacher. And that's a healing art. And I built contentment upon, yeah, I did want to be a doctor, but I'm okay. I'm still in the healing field. And so
Mm.
I just go back to keep your dreams alive and keep your options in your mind open for how they can manifest themselves.
I love that, that you're saying also, even if I didn't choose exactly that profession,
Yes,
my path somehow led me then to the thing
that's right.
that I'm actually, you know, doing. Like the thing that I wanted to do is help people heal.
Yes,
And that's what I'm doing now. I love that. Yeah. And there were so many other great things you said that also reminded me of people that I had completely forgotten about. Like, especially in those environments that are traditionally male-dominated
sure.
environments, having somebody to take you under your wings can be so helpful. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
having someone who's actually seeing you and seeing your
Yes,
talent and telling you that you have talent. Um, so I would never have ended up where I ended up and starting my own business if I hadn't had people in my corporate career, that
yes.
would have told me great things like, okay, one person said you should not be in HR. That's a waste of your talent. And I think he was right, He said you should
Yes,
be out there coaching, consulting, yeah, working with people.
yes,
Um, and other people, they helped me get my job in Switzerland. Like they were, hey, I'm looking for a successor. It should be you. Yeah. So
yes.
you always have these amazing people that you meet, and usually, there's so many years older than you are, and you think, oh, how do they know all this stuff? Are they right about it? Yeah. So
What's
yeah, it's good to have those.
Absolutely. And I think the two things, those older people, and if we can find the energy or the patience rather, as a young person to simply figuratively sit at their feet and listen to
Mhm.
what they have to say. We are absorbing so much information, but we're really in the fact-finding
Mm,
stage of, in fact, collecting stage of our lives. They've been there and
mm.
they've also applied that those facts, that knowledge. And what has come out of that is the wisdom that they are now trying to pass on to us at an early stage if we can only sit still and listen to it.
Which will be very hard for a lot of people.
Of course, it's hard for all of us. It's hard. It's absolutely hard for all of us.
That's why we need yoga and meditation.
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned WHO already, so I can also mention it. And
Yes.
um, you ended up working there. And how did you get from New York City to Geneva or Washington, D.C., or where you were before? Take us, yeah, from that part of the journey.
Sure. So I had just I lived in Washington, D.C. Well, I lived in California for 7 years. I moved halfway across the country to Texas for several years, and then onward to Washington, D.C. for the last 20 years, or for 20 years. I retired and had just moved to Connecticut. My partner and I had just built or remodeled our forever home. We were settled in. We were retired people. I was standing in the yard, literally covered up to my elbows in coffee grounds because I was planting tulips. And in that part of the country, you use coffee grounds to help deter some of, not all of, but some of the squirrels from digging up 100% of your tulip bulbs. And my pocket vibrated. It was my phone on vibrate mode, and it vibrated. And I asked my partner to answer the phone. and to put it to my ear. And she did. And the person on the other end of the phone was a former colleague of mine who
Okay.
had moved on to the United Nations. And she said, "Hey, I just got a message from my counterpart at the World Health Organization. They have a specific problem that is plaguing them, and they're looking for someone with your profile. Would you like to speak with them?" And at the time, I was a partner in a boutique consulting firm, mostly generating business and passing that business on, not
Mhm.
engaging in a whole lot of it personally. And I thought, sure, I'm happy to do that. After I learned a little bit more about what the problem was, I thought, yeah, they need some policy updates and probably a little bit of guidance, maybe some leadership interventions, and they'll be back on their way and everything will be fine. So I spoke with them, and I was speaking with them, thinking I was speaking with them as a consultant. And at the end of the conversation, which was an interview, they offered me a job.
And
And
you thought you were in for a 6 months project.
when I arrived, I thought I was, so this happened and everything went very quickly. 3 weeks later, I went from the New York area to Geneva for
Mhm.
what I thought was a 6 month project. And here we are, I'm finishing year three.
Amazing. I'm very interested in hearing about your expat experience as well.
Sure.
And I also wanted to remind our audience that there is a podcast from the WHO. I think
Yes.
it's a public one. I
Yes.
can link to it in the show notes where you talk a bit more about your work at
Yes.
WHO. So that's definitely one worth listening to. So if you could maybe now talk a bit more about the experience of coming to Geneva from, being a wonderful retiree at whatever, far too young in Connecticut. How did that go?
It was very exciting in the beginning. We thought that we were coming here and gonna put in some hard work, but really we're on a European vacation on someone else's dime, and that was 100% not the truth. There was a lot of hard work to put in long hours, 10, 11, 15-hour days, sometimes 6 or 7 days a a week, and which didn't leave a lot of time for that air quotes vacation.
Hmm.
So after about 2 months, oh, excuse me, after about a month, we realized, when are we going to have time to look for temporary accommodations, as a furnished apartment, something so that we can get out of a hotel room, because we also came here with our 27 kilo or 65-pound dog. And
Oh,
so in a
God.
small hotel room, that was quite difficult. We also came to Geneva in November, which
Oh,
was in the
the
darkest
worst part.
time.
Mm.
Yes, the darkest time of the year.
Oh.
And a lot of things in that regard didn't line up the way we had envisioned that it would. We realized very quickly that the system of renting an apartment and finding temporary accommodations was a very different system than we were
Mhm.
accustomed to. We weren't able to walk into a leasing office and say, "Do you have an apartment?"
Mm.
and take it or not.
Mm.
The whole regime, and it was just something that we was literally foreign to us. The other issue is that many folks told us that people in Geneva speak English, and while that is true, that is not the mother tongue.
Mm.
And native people are far more comfortable speaking French, which neither of us spoke. So to get into a deeper or authentic conversation with someone, to strike up a conversation with a stranger on the street, didn't go very far. Sure, we could figure out our way around, but it didn't go very far. The other issue for me is I was speaking English all day, every day, so I didn't have much of a space to learn very much French in the beginning. It was
Mm.
very difficult. I would say that because of the housing situation, our first time around, things didn't go well at all.
Mm.
90 days into the journey, my partner and my dog, I brought them back. I brought my partner and my dog back to New York, and I came back to Geneva and began commuting every 3 weeks or so between New York and Geneva. And eventually, the 7 months came to an end, and I told the folks here, I have to go home. I thank you for the opportunity. And they were kind enough, and I think based upon the changes that and the work that I was able to provide, they allowed me to do my job remotely for the next year and a half. And it still required quite a bit of commuting. Every 3 or 4 weeks, I was back here in Geneva for a week. So it's been a change. It's been quite an adjustment. And even though I was living in New York, I was working in Geneva and working on Geneva time. So I was up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every morning, even when I was in the US. And eventually the position that I hold now came available, and I was promoted into that position, and my boss told me that I have to return to Geneva. So the true must find and figure out expat scenario really kicked in about a year and a half ago.
And I'm now also addressing my dear global mobility friends in the audience here. We know these things, global
Yes,
mobility professionals, we deal with this topic a lot. Expat coaches, they probably know these topics.
sure.
But I still speak to so many HR professionals who just don't get it. They don't understand how it is if you move here from another country. Now, luckily, I also moved here from another country, so I can relate to all of that stress that you have been going through. But at least I spoke German when I moved here.
Yes,
But still, we had this issue with the housing. I was used to a much easier process from Frankfurt.
sure.
It was just not that hard. You just asked someone, you paid them, and they found you an apartment. I didn't have to fill 10 forms to apply
Right.
for an apartment in Frankfurt. And even though I worked with a relocation agency, it was still difficult and a lot of work until we found a place. And then that wasn't even the place that I really liked. It was
Sure.
like at the end of the day, the first night I was spent there, I said, I want to move back again. I think I made the wrong decision.
Sure.
And there's a lot of other things, that if you don't know them about Switzerland, they can be kind of tough in the beginning. It sounds ridiculous, but the recycling, or
Yes.
the washing machines, these little
Yes.
things, they can drive you crazy if you're trying to perform at that level you and I are performing at,
Yes.
where, we are so focused on our work. We want to, build a team, get stuff in place, do that, do X and Y. And we don't want to deal with recycling and stuff like that. But Switzerland is in that space is kind of that's a bit old fashioned, and there's still the assumption that somebody stays at home. Yeah. So usually, the wife. And
Sure.
that for me has just been, a bit of a shocker when I moved here 15 years ago.
Sure.
Um, and one of the things, that I also think is worth mentioning here. Many companies, organizations, they
Sure.
hire people into Switzerland on a local contract.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, in an international organization, it is contractually a little different,
Yes.
but still, some of the things you went through, working with different time zones, not getting supported, not having temporary housing organized, and all of that, it can be an unnecessary stress level that could easily be avoided by, I would say, a small investment. Yeah, like providing temporary accommodation
Yes.
doesn't cost you that much as an employer. It's
That's right.
just helping to get settled here the first 3 months, and then you can start to find an apartment from here. So, or even the price of expat coaching,
Yes.
if you think about it, is in comparison to the risk of you failing
Yes.
so much lower. But still, HR professionals to tell me, why would we need that? Why would we need spouse support? So yeah, I'm sorry. I needed to just pitch that in because drives me crazy.
Well, but you hit the nail on the head. If we had arrived with housing, even if it was housing that we didn't care for, as long as it
Yeah.
was safe and clean and habitable and what have you, that would have made a difference in our opportunity to succeed. It would have freed up mental energy to be able to connect in the community and find other like-minded or similarly situated that people and enriched our experience here. And perhaps my partner and dog wouldn't have gone home
Mm,
after 90 days. And I was extremely committed to the project. If it had been any more overwhelming than it was, that may have caused me to pivot. I was retired after all and did not have as much to gain as I had to lose.
mm,
And that is a risk that I think employers don't consider. But I think that consideration, the lack of consideration, is because many of those who are responsible for implementing it, the HR professionals, have not had the experience. They have nothing to relate to. And unfortunately, systems are therefore not built within the organizations to support that. And
mm,
that is unfortunate because it begs the question,
mm,
how much talent is being lost or perhaps not ever seen because of that small investment. And I have to tell you, and this is an some might call it a shameless plug. It's simply my reality. y- the services that we were able to gain by having you as a coach in our lives, I believe, is why we're still here. The transition, even though we found housing before we moved back this time, the transition was so tough and so overwhelming without the additional support. How would we have overcome it? And I'm not so sure that we would have.
mm. Well, well, thanks for the advertising. I appreciate it. Yeah. Now we want to sort of still encourage people to move here.
Absolutely.
And and I guess, you also, because you're such an accomplished professional, you have so much to share, Lisa. Maybe can you tell us a bit more about what you would advise a younger professional, younger woman, maybe from an international background,
Sure.
to before they consider, for example, a career, in your field? What would you tell your younger self today?
I would say try many different things because it goes back to the dream and being open to how it could look. If you have a desire to do something, take a step in that direction. If you would like to, if you think you want to be in international development or work in the humanitarian sector or perhaps be in some sort of enforcement position, begin to start your trying by beginning to get to know people who are in that field. And when you make the approach, the goal is to connect with as many people in the most genuine way that you can, being your authentic self so that you are showing who you are and can receive po positive and important and honest feedback about the direction that you're taking, maybe how you're approaching something, the manner in which you're thinking about solving a particular thing. Those
Mhm.
connections become important. They're not, I don't like the word networking because networking can sound and sometimes land as transactional. So
Mhm.
I talk about it in terms of making connections. And if you've made a connection, maintain that connection. It's not your network who gets you where you want to go. It's their network that gets you there. If you are being your authentic self, then people know the real person that they're dealing with and can help to guide you in a direction that will increase or improve the chances of you being successful. Remember the story that I was telling about planting tulips. I
Mhm.
didn't know anybody at WHO and I wasn't even looking for a job. but a connection that I had made 15 years prior and maintained is
Yeah.
who rang my phone that day.
Yeah. And because you were on top of their mind when they were asked, do you know somebody who could do this? Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah, I
That's
think,
right.
and I think, people, yeah, especially I noticed that in coaching as well, people underestimate the importance of building professional relationships over
That's
your
right.
career. Yeah. Not
That's right.
only, I mean, not only for advancing, but also because, you never know where your journey leads you to.
That's right.
And here it is so critical to find a job in Switzerland. If you don't have access to the circle of trust, believe
That's
me,
right.
it's very hard to land a job here. Yeah, so yeah, I think, it's for me, it's always been important, but especially important when I started Global People Transitions.
Yes.
My network actually carried me through the first few years. Yeah.
And it's often it is there the strength of your network whose coattail that you are riding on.
Mm.
I have been I have been asked, who would you recommend for X position or Y project? And
Mm.
because I have a very strong connection with the person who's asking, and we have implicit and inherent trust between us, whoever I am recommending, it's the same as recommending myself.
Mhm.
And so that the person who is on the receiving end of that has the opportunity, of course, with solid performance and with honesty and integrity and tenacity and all of those things, but they have the opportunity to benefit from the years of trust and or the years of time that it took to build that trust. So it
Yeah.
becomes critical when you can make those connections, keep the connections.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important. I sometimes speak of the trust account. So
Yes.
it's a bit like a bank account. You
Yes,
basically pay into that trust account, and then if somebody refers you to another person, you're benefiting from their trust account.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, when we speak about this topic, I usually want to ask you about your favorite social media network. Do you have
Sure.
one?
Yes, I have two for very different reasons. My LinkedIn network feeds into exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Although I still have business cards, I do not use them to the degree that I use LinkedIn. And whenever often people will ask me, do you know someone who can? And I
Mhm.
immediately go to my LinkedIn contacts to remember, oh yes, this person, and here's how we connected. This is who I would recommend. So professionally, definitely LinkedIn. On the personal side, I would say Facebook. And as antiquated as that may sound, especially to those who are new and up and coming, for me, Facebook in my downtime serves as particularly Reels, the Reels, they serve as a source of entertainment.
Uh-huh.
For example, we have a dog watching, our dog is a golden doodle. Watching other golden doodles behave the same way as mine is quite entertaining for me. I also find it to be educational. Remember, I like to cook and I
Yeah.
like to garden and I like to do yoga, and there are many sources of enhancement to those practices. And then the last thing that Facebook does is it inspires experiences for me. There's a particular set of groups called something along the lines of a view through the window or a view through my window. And it's a picture, usually a picture through a window at something. And
Uh-huh.
it allows me to take in details that I wouldn't ordinarily see or see parts of the world that I haven't seen and that I then have a desire to create a plan to go see. So those three things, the entertainment, the education, and the experiences are why Facebook on the personal side is my favorite.
It sounds amazing. And I also know that you already have a big personal travel schedule coming up.
Yes, 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 I do.
And so, what
Yes.
else is going on in your life? What? what would you like to tell us about other events going on or? Mhm.
Well, while there are many professional events going on, I would simply say create the events for yourself, no matter what the circumstance is. At this stage of my life, I have the privilege of being able to, away from work and having nothing to do with work, take 3-day weekends, take a day off and tack it onto a weekend or combine it with holidays to go do something else somewhere else. Many of the events that I did in the early part of my career were in conjunction with work. So when work sent me on travel somewhere, I would leave either the Friday before and after work and pay for the additional accommodations myself, but experience the city outside of the hotel and that I was going to. And truth be told, that's how I built a global network before I ever entered the international stage. So,
Mm, great.
yes.
Well, I could go on and talk to you for another hour. I feel we have to come to an end at this point.
Yes,
Lisa, it was amazing talking to you, and all the
likewise.
best for the journeys ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And likewise, I always look forward to listening to and watching your Red Couch talks. I learn so much from them.
That's great. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
You
Bye,
too.
Lisa.
Thank you.